Vamp, Chapter 5. I walked over to my closet and put on a pair of jeans that had scattered holes and worn spots. They look nicer than they sound. They are my favorite pair, and I am aware of how my arse looks in them. Then I chose a nice green satin tank top. And threw my fitted leather jacket over it. I decided to leave my hair down and curl it. Its auburn strands seemed to glow in the light here, and he'd always seen me with my hair up at the bar. I finished curling it and shook the long strands to relax the curls. I don't do a full face of makeup. Instead, I add a little bronzer and blush to my cheeks, a smidge of Vaseline on my lips, and on rare occasions, such as tonight, a glitzy yet nude tone eyeshadow blend with black mascara. Well, there's a couple movies starting in about 30 minutes at the theater. I figured you could pick. Then I thought we could go to the local diner and get a late dinner. Sounds good to me, I said, and we left the house. When we got outside, I was surprised to see a 1950 Chevy truck sitting in my driveway. It was painted a deep blue, and the chrome looked like it had just been freshly polished. It brought back a bunch of memories from when I was around in the 1950s. And I couldn't stop myself. Wow, I used to own a truck just like that. Aden glanced at me surprised. Really? How long ago? What did you do with it? I stood there for a second, just staring at the truck. I missed that truck. I had lost it in an accident in 1974. Fucking drunk driver. I regained my focus fast. Yeah, it was a while ago. I sold it when I moved, I said, looking up at him. Well, that's crazy. I didn't really picture you for the restoration type. Oh, I didn't restore it. I bought it that way. It was basically new. I laughed nervously. You got lucky. This thing was a bitch to find parts for, and that's why I'll never sell it. Sometimes I wish I could have lived in that time era. I feel like it would have been the perfect fit for me. I looked over at him as the engine turned over. Yeah, I can see that. He laughed, and we made small talk on the way to the theater. When we got to the theater, Aden walked ahead of me and paid for our tickets. And then we got in line to get some popcorn. As we stood in line, I noticed that a few people were looking our way. I couldn't tell if they were looking at me specifically or the both of us together. Sometimes I hated being the new person in town, especially a small town. When I looked up at Aden, I could tell he was pretending to read the menu boards, but there was a small smile on his lips that let me know he had noticed people staring too. Without acknowledging any of the stares, we got our popcorn, bunch of crunch, and pops, and made our way to our seats. I enjoyed the movie. We picked the newest Marvel movie that was out. Action and humor are always good for a first date. There were a few people who got choked up during the film. I could understand why, but as a vampire, my emotions are not what they used to be. I don't cry. Our emotions are extremely suppressed, and it takes a lot for us to feel anything. We walked out of the theater and discarded our popcorn bag. Then we were off to the diner. The diner we went to was like one of those you see in older movies. It had the whole 1950s theme about it. It was very retro. There were only a handful of people in the diner when we got there. We took a seat in the very last booth from the door. The waitress came over to get our drinks and gave us our menus. So what's the best thing here? I asked. They have the best pancakes around. That's what I'll probably get, replied Aden as he shut his menu. I decided that sounded good and laid my menu on the table. The waitress came over and took our orders, made sure we were satisfied with our drinks, and left. Thank you for taking me to a movie and out to dinner. No problem. Thank you for joining me. So tell me about yourself, I said, collecting my hair and tying it in a messy bun at the base of my neck. Well, what would you like to know? Anything. Tell me whatever. Well, it's kind of hard to think of something right off the bat. How about you ask me some questions and I'll ask you some? I can do that. Is there anything off limits, though? Nope, I have nothing to hide. How about you? Nope. All right. Where were you born? He asked. Boston, Massachusetts. You? Juneau, Alaska. Did you go to college? Yeah, I have a couple degrees. I double majored in law and history, and for fun I got my nursing license. Yourself? Wow, well, I have a degree in engineering, and then my pops also taught me how to run the boat and everything that entails. He shifted in his seat and subtly glanced around the restaurant. Are you in a relationship? I raised an eyebrow. Relationships to me were something that just didn't happen with me moving every year. No, I just moved here, remember? What about you? You don't have a wife and kids waiting at home, do you? Aden laughed. Well, I was thinking maybe long distance thing or something. And I wouldn't have been surprised if someone else had asked you on a few dates already. And no, I'm not seeing anyone. The only thing waiting for me at home is a pile of dirty dishes. Where are your parents? They're both dead. Where's your mom? Aden looked surprised, and I could tell he felt bad. I'm so sorry, he said, looking down at the table. It's okay, really. I laid my hand on his. He looked at my hand and grabbed it with his other hand and said, "Jesus, you're freezing." Oh, I know, I said quickly. I have really bad circulation in my hands and feet. I tried to pull my hand away from his, but he wouldn't let it go. I could feel his hand warming mine up. It was a strange feeling. It felt like I was sucking heat out of his body. I could feel warmth moving up my arm the longer he held it. He continued to hold my hand while he said, "My mom left us when I was 10. She was sleeping around with my pop's best friend. He found out and confronted her about it. He wanted to work it out, but she wanted to get out of here. His friend left with her, and I haven't heard from her since." "Now I'm sorry," I said, looking down at the table. I really didn't know what to say to that, but it kind of explained the feeling of caution I got from him. He seemed very hesitant and careful when it came to me. "It's okay. Don't worry about it." Our food couldn't have arrived at a more perfect time. The waitress set the food on the table, and Aden let go of my hand. We ate in silence for a few minutes. How's your food?" Aden asked. "Probably some of the best pancakes I've ever eaten," I said between bites. "And their bacon is amazing," I said as I held up a piece and popped it in my mouth. "Good, I'm glad." "I didn't really picture you for a meat eater," he said as he stabbed a piece of pancake with his fork. "Oh, well, let me tell you, I love meat," I said, taking a sip of my water. "That's what she said." I nodded and laughed, covering my mouth while I swallowed. "Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Scott, best boss ever." "I love that show. I think I've watched it about 1,000 times," I said. We talked more as we ate, and by the time our plates were clean, we were talking like we had been friends for years. When we finished dinner, Aden paid and we left the restaurant. It had started to rain while we were eating. I had always loved the rain. I found it very relaxing and peaceful. "Thank you again for such a nice night," I said in the truck on the way to my house. "I really enjoyed myself." "You're welcome. I had a good time too," he said, looking at me and then turning back to the road. The wipers made a quiet squeak with every swipe, and the rain pelted the metal truck, replicating the sound of an old tin roof. I could tell Aden was deep in thought, but I didn't ask what about. I just enjoyed the rain and the quiet song on the radio. When he pulled into my driveway, he put the truck in park but left the engine running. I was surprised that he didn't suggest coming in for some Netflix and chill, but it was nice to know that he was different. "I'll walk you to your door," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "You don't have to worry about it. It's raining and all." "What kind of gentleman would I be if I didn't walk you to your door?" he said, opening his truck door and climbing out. I grabbed my purse off the floor, and I heard him running around the truck to come open my door. Chivalry ain't dead after all, I thought. I hopped out of the truck, and we ran up to my steps. I felt horrible because he was waiting beside me while I fumbled in my purse for my keys, in the rain. "Ah, here they are," I said, pulling them out from the bottom of the bag. I looked at him smiling and realized he had turned to face me. We stood there looking at each other for a second before he whispered, "God, you're beautiful." His heart was pounding in his chest. It sounded strong. "I'm soaked. I can't be," I said back as I looked down at myself, half chuckling. I looked up at him as he slowly lowered his head. His right hand reached up and brushed some of the hair out of my face. And then his lips met mine. It was a gentle kiss. It was perfect. His lips were soft and warm. I could tell he frequently used lip balm, vanilla, and mint. His blood smelled of honey, apples, and copper. It made my mouth water, and I wanted to bite his lip and draw just the smallest drop of blood. I bet it tasted like a candied apple. The pretty ones behind glass in the fancy treat shop windows. The smell was so sweet and intoxicating. His hands moved to each side of my face, bringing me as close to him as possible. In this moment in the rain, it seemed so perfect that I didn't want anything else. As quickly as I let myself drift into thoughts of drinking his blood, I turned them off and enjoyed the last few seconds before we parted. "Sorry, I couldn't help myself," said Aden, looking down at me as he lightly rubbed my cheek with his thumb. "No apology needed." Aden smiled and let his hand fall softly from my face. "I'll give you a call later," he said, squeezing my hand. "You'd better get inside. I don't want you to get sick." I gave his hand a return squeeze. "Okay, drive safe." I watched him jog back to his truck and climb in. Then I opened my door and went inside. Once I shut the door, I leaned against it for what seemed like hours. Then I walked myself upstairs, stripped down in my skivvies, and climbed into bed, where we proceeded to text each other until the wee hours of the morning, just like two teenagers.